I feel like a lot of people that I case with, they ace the case because they have a very, very positive attitude. Like they won't be bogged down by like maybe getting their math wrong, or like be bogged down by doing making some mistake somewhere. They just like came back.
Thank you, Joanna, for your time today. Really, really appreciate it. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So professionally, I am a consultant at McKinsey. I joined the firm in July. During COVID, doing consulting is kind of crazy. But last year, I did a summer internship at McKinsey, and I really loved my experience. So that's why I rejoined the firm. Before joining the firm, actually graduated from UNC, in the Flagler Business School. So go Hills.
Go Hills, yep.
Yeah, and then before business school, I was doing CPG marketing in China, Shanghai. So I did market research, product marketing, as well as brand management. Really loved the marketing experience, but want to kind of like venture out into the business world and get to know more other functions, and kind of like transition to the business management role. So that's why I chose to do business school and then pivot my career into consulting.
Gotcha. So I know today's interview is more around like how we crack consulting interviews, what best practices for.
Yeah.
But was there a specific reason you wanted to come into consulting, or yeah?
Yeah. Okay, so consulting are always big on frameworks, right? So as well as like insights, I think I will share like three. The first one is I get bored very easily. So I always want like new things to stimulate myself and to be on very like high learning curve. And after like during business school, I talked to a lot of people like doing different jobs, and I realized that consulting is really fun because like you have different projects every like 2 to 3 months. You like kind of like handle different clients, you talk to them, and that is like a very different experience. Like every 2 to 3 years, basically like you are having a career or a different career like every 2 to 3 months. So for me, that is very fun. That's the first reason. The second reason is I enjoy learning, and the best way for me to learn is to observe what other people are doing. So that's why like I love working with really smart people and observe what they are doing, so I can internalize and then make it my own. So that's how I learn. That's the second reason. And then the third reason is more personal. I love traveling, like love traveling. Like being on the plane and then like going from places to places is kind of like my dream job, especially like when you are not paying for flights.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, you are achieving all of those except for the traveling part, because I mean, obviously we're in COVID now, but
yeah.
Hopefully very soon you'll be able to travel all around the world.
Finger crossed.
Yes. Gotcha. So yeah, let's dive right into the questions I have for you. So consulting interviews are infamous because of their case type of questions. So my question is, what are some question types do you get? Is it just consulting case questions, or I mean, obviously you probably get like questions like tell me about yourself kind of questions as well. Like, can you maybe share a little bit about your experience there?
Yeah, sure. So actually for consulting interviews, you will have two parts of it. So the first part is case interviews. So what case interview is like a mini problem that you are solving. So it could be about like how to increase revenue for a restaurant, right? Or how do I franchise a food truck, like Italian food truck, and make like open more food trucks, make it more profitable across the state or across the nation, right? Yeah. So that is the case type of question. And then the second question is the behavioral interview that is very familiar to everybody, but a little bit different is like it's always in a scenario, like for the consulting behavioral interviews. So they will ask a lot of questions about like, for example, tell me about time that you work with a diverse team. And you share your story, and then there will be a lot of follow-up questions. For example, if I say, hey, once upon a time, I work with a team based in India, and then this is XYZ happened. And then you will have a lot of follow-up questions like, how did you feel at that time? Why did you make the decisions that you made at that time? Because they are trying to get like, who is the real you behind all this? And then they want to understand like your mindset behind all this. So where there will be a lot of like follow-up questions.
I think that's very similar to Amazon, actually.
Yeah.
Like, we ask a lot of follow-up questions as well, just to understand like the thought process behind it, and
Right.
also just to understand you as a person as well.
Yeah, I think it's very similar because like for Amazon, you have the leadership principles. And then for consulting, like every firm have like different values and they are trying to like see whether you are like a fit to those values. For example, like McKinsey, entrepreneurship, like problem solving, all this, they want to understand through your story whether you embody those values or not.
That's really interesting because honestly, I didn't really know there's difference in. I thought consulting firms were just consulting firms. Not to degrade or anything. I was just not knowledgeable enough in that field, but gotcha. So different companies have different values they seek, and it just based on, I guess it kind of all ramps up to the fit you are
Yeah,
to
exactly.
the company. Okay.
Yeah, I realized that fit is a very big thing, like for consulting firms, like why I was recruiting for consulting. So like initially I was thinking, yeah, those are consulting firms, right? All the MVPs, like they want smart people who are like great presenters and communicators.
Yeah.
But when you actually talk to people, you realize they are very different. Like for consulting, at least like my understanding is like McKinsey people, they are very hardworking, but being like they work hard, but they also want to have fun as well. So they have like kind of like
difference.
Yeah, the difference is there. And like for BCG people, it's more about like they want people to be book smart because they have like a lot of like articles they publish. So they were evaluate certain candidates based on like their GMAT score or the achievement they have at school. So when you talk to people, you can realize there are some differences.
Gotcha. That's very informative that I have not known, and probably audience would be really appreciating. So moving on, what are some sample questions? Like you slightly mentioned about like, improving a Italian restaurant or spend revenue or something like that. But can you maybe share some sample questions that you have got or practiced when you were back in MBA?
Yeah. So I think one of really fun case that I got is to help a nonprofit organization increase. So they have the vaccine and they have like certain problems like convincing people to administer the vaccine. Like the adoption rate is really low. So what can you do, or what kind of ways can you think about to increase the adoption of the vaccine? So that's like a very brief like scenario of the case. And then there are different sections of it. So for the first section, you need to like show your framework, right? Like what are the ways that you are thinking to increase the adoption rate? So you come up with the framework, say, hey, to increase the adoption rate. So first of all, you need to have supply. If you don't have supply, then there's no way like it can be improved. And then you also need to increase like the education because some people just don't believe in it. And then you also need to improve the transportation process, the supply chain. So you lay out all the framework, and then like basically that's what we call like issue tree. You go through the issue tree with your interviewer, and then your interviewer will and then you will say, hey, I think for this problem we can start thinking about how to improve the supply first, right? And then like you dig deeper into the supply, and then you may have some charts, some math to do to either prove or disapprove your hypothesis, which lie down under the issue tree. And then there will be some follow-up questions to test like your communication and creativity.
Gotcha. So if I'm understanding this correctly, you basically get a question, a very high level question, and then you kind of tackle down into different segments of that question that can potentially
you break it down.
Help out with the end goal you have, for example, a revenue or, for example, adoption rate here. And then you give and you kind of dissect it in those smaller segments and then kind of give a higher level suggestion. Is that what it looks like?
Yeah. So basically, like you have a problem statement that you need to solve for. And then the second part is you show like the framework that you want to use for that problem statement. And then the case interview will focus on one part of the issue tree, one part of the framework. it won't be like about the whole framework.
Gotcha.
So you will just deep dive into that one particular part of the problem, and then dig deeper into what is the root cause of that, how do we solve that, and then provide suggestions.
Would you get more data from the interviewer along the way? Okay.
Yeah. So you will have a lot of like charts. You will need to read charts. You need to do math. So for a consulting interview, I think like a lot of like what I struggle with is like fast math, because you need to be very quick doing the math, like lay down the math in a very logical way, explain it, do the math, and then like under the time pressure as well.
Okay. So, and it might be a dumb question, but do you get to use your phone to calculate these stuff, or do you like, or do
No, it's a mental math.
Gotcha. Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, because when you think about like consulting, like the skills they want to see is, first of all, you need to know how to communicate, right? And then you need to know how to break down a big problem into smaller pieces, because otherwise you will just be boiling ocean. So that is important as well. And then the third piece will be the analysis, because every suggestion that you make will be backed by the analysis. So that's why like the math part is very important for the analysis.
How long is it usually, this whole process? Is it like 30 minutes?
Yeah, so for a case interview, it's normally 30 minutes. And then you will have 30 minutes for the behavioral questions.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, that's interesting. I mean, you kind of talked a little bit about, issue tree, and then you kind of gave answers to it, but like, is there a way of best answering these questions, or like, what would be a secret sauce to kind of crack these
I love this question. So for me, I don't think there is a best answer at all, because like it's very conceptual, right? Like everybody will have like different angles and will have like different frameworks. You can dissect the problem into so many different ways. So I don't think there is the perfect way to do it. But in consulting, we'll hear a lot about McKinsey. So it's mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, right? So that is the way that you are trying to solve the problem. That's how consulting firms are evaluating your thought process.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. I hear Macy a lot, and when I work as well. So
yeah,
I never understood what it is, but it doesn't. Yeah, but I still can work here. So other questions I had was, how did you prepare? Like, I mean, obviously you got to practice.
Yeah.
Like, what was your way of preparing it?
Okay. So by preparing, are you meaning like just prepare for the interview, or the whole process, like including work to get the interview and then go through the interview process?
You know what? Yeah, maybe let's touch on the interview piece, like the case interview piece, and then maybe later we can touch base a little bit on the, just like the whole process, maybe.
Yeah. So for the interview piece, I think there are two parts of it, right? Like for the case interview, I think like for me, there are three things that are really important. The first one is you have to have like a business sense, because a lot of those problem statements are business related. And you can build your business sense like by reading Wall Street Journal or some like business related articles that what we learned during business school, right? Yeah. So business sense is very important. And then the second one is the communication piece, because you need to kind of like explain your thought process logically so the other person can follow. And then so that the best way to do that is like work with your peers, or work with like some coaches, case coaches, I guess, case interview coaches, or some people who have gone through the interview process. Sure. So they know they can help you practice. So the communication piece like is the best through practice. So that's the second piece of it. And I think the third piece of it is just your attitude, because like the case interview is not for everybody, because it's like under a lot of stress, you are trying to solve a lot of problems. So you need to have a very good attitude and really enjoy the process. I feel like a lot of people that I case with, they ace the case because they have a very, very positive attitude. Like they won't be bogged down by like maybe getting their math wrong, or like be bogged down by doing making some mistake somewhere. They just like came back. Like it's okay to make a mistake during case interviews as well, but you need to like put yourself up together and then like go for it and show that you really enjoy it, like solving a problem.
So going into a little bit deeper, is there a way to like, how did you practice? Like, so did you just like have a lot of case questions and then you kind of studied on your own, or did you like mostly do it with your friend or a peer?
Yeah. So I think there are different like stages, right? Like first, when you get to know the case interview, you are not sure like what exactly is a case interview, what type of questions where I get, like what kind of, not type of question, the problem statement I will get. So I think the best way to keep up to speed on those is just to read some books. For example, the book that I read during business school is Case in Point. I read that. And then there are other some consulting like videos, like case interview videos that you can look at on YouTube. So you get a general sense of like what case interview is about. So I think that's the first step. And then the second step is like starting, you have like a few problem statements. You have a little bit of practice like with your friends, and you get to know like what the process looks like and where are you during the process, right? Are you really good at like communication? Then probably need to work on your math a little bit. Or your framework is just not missing enough. You need to work on your thought process. So through those practices, you know like what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. And for you to kind of like amplify your strengths or kind of like improve your weaknesses, what I did was like I did a lot of practice on myself as well. For example, early on when I did case interview, I realized I'm not very good with frameworks, but I'm very good with math as well as like brainstorming, being creative, like during the case. So I did a lot of silent practice by myself. So I would just open a case book, look at the problem statement, and then have a piece of paper, draw the framework, and then compare that with like, so to speak, like the correct answer in the case book or the ideas that you should include in the case book. And then I can identify what are the gaps in my thinking.
Gotcha. No, that's super helpful. My last question actually was, do you have any book or resource that you would like to share with the audience? What was the book that you mentioned?
I read a Case in Point before. I think that's a very, that's kind of like a book that everybody reads when they prepare for case interviews. So I think that's a good start. And then there are a lot of like consulting case books, the different like business schools, MBA like student clubs or consulting clubs were used for people to help people practice. I think that is a very good resource as well.
Gotcha. Okay. If you have time, like what would you be like? So like going back to kind of advices on or best practice or your way of getting a interview from consulting firm, like what is like, do you need to like network a lot? Like what does the process look like?
Yeah, so I will talk about the process in general first, and then talk about like my experience in preparing. So the process normally is you will have for MBA, okay? Or do you want me to talk about like in very general?
You can talk in general.
Okay, so you need to get an interview invite first, right?
Yep.
And the thing with that is like there are a lot of people like applying for consulting firms, especially MBB. So to get that interview, you need to make sure two things. You need to make sure you have a very good resume that help you stand out, to showcase like the skills that consulting firms are looking for. For example, analytic skills, communication skills, leadership, entrepreneurship, or those kind of skills. I think is quite common across all the companies. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is you need to understand what consultants are doing. And so you understand that by doing a network, having the info call with people, and actually understand what their job is about.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense.
And
Yeah.
sorry, one more thing I want to add is like,
Yes,
I think
please.
people didn't realize actually the websites of all the consulting firms are really useful, like resources.
Mm-hmm.
So you will understand the company values, the firm values. You will understand like they also have like case libraries
Oh, really?
in their website, so you can access, and you can have some sample case from that
Gotcha.
firm as well. So I think
Gotcha.
website is definitely a source of insights that I would recommend. And also, I followed the Instagram of consulting firms as well because they were just use
Social
that
media.
to communicate and then share their newest insights, right? So that's a good way for you to understand the fit of the firms as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was amazing, and that was all the questions I had.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Joanna, for your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.